Welcome to the Financial Deviant Podcast. Very excited to be here with you again today. I've been doing a little bit of reading, and last week we focused on workplace 401ks as a vehicle to grow your wealth and save for the latter years of your life. But I was reading some information earlier today from Fidelity and from Vanguard, two of the larger workplace retirement plan holders. And Fidelity put together some numbers from Q4 of 2022, and it was talking about the average 401k balance by generation. So overall, for all generations, Q4 2022, the average 401k balance was $103,000. $103,900. If they broke it down further, and it goes without saying, you could probably expect that boomers, the older generation, had the highest average balance, which was $209,000. And then following that, Gen Xers, which I'm a part of, the average 401k balance was $137,200. And it comes on down to millennials, had an average balance of $41,200. Then Gen Zs had an average 401k balance of $6,000. And they even got into the difference in the genders. Women had an average balance of $84,000, and men had an average balance of $124,200. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But we go even further than that. Vanguard published some numbers on the average balance in the 401k plan by income. So in other words, there's a range of income, and then within that range, what was the average 401k balance? So for people who made under $15,000 or less, the average balance was $27,759. Now, average can be a little deceiving. So sometimes the more accurate picture can be provided if you look at the median. So the average for $15,000 or less was $26,759, but the median was $3,341. The average can be a little skewed because you have some high income earners, and it looks like the average is much better. It looks like the numbers are much better than they really are. So in this case, I believe the median is probably more accurate, which is $3,341. So given that, we'll just stick with the median as we read these numbers. When the income level moves to $15,000 to $29,999, that range, the median 401k balance is $4,678. When you move to the $30,000 to $49,999 range, the median balance is $10,665. And then, so you moved into the next range was from $50,000 through $74,999, and that average balance was $32,482. When you move on up to $75,000 through $99,999, the average balance moves to $65,201. And then the last couple here, when the income is between $100,000 and $149,999, the balance is $116,223. And of course, that's the median balance. And when you get to $150,000 or more, the median 401k balance is $225,478. I read that because it gives each of us an opportunity to just kind of see where we are. And we know everybody has different circumstances and Not everybody has the same things they've had to deal with. We know that, we realize that, but I think that's pretty interesting when you see kind of how you stack up against a larger sample size. That's that. Now, as I said last week, we talked a lot about the 401k as an investment vehicle. As a matter of fact, it could be the entirety of someone's investment vehicle. And if that's the case, that is perfectly fine. But a lot of times people will have a 401k, but they will also have an individual IRA. And I will tell you, when I was much younger, when I opened up an IRA was when I left an employer, I left a job, and I had 401k funds in their 401k plan, and I had to figure out what to do with it. So it was at that point that I opened up a rollover IRA and rolled my 401k funds from that employer that I was no longer with into my own individual IRA. And as I said, that was quite a few years ago. And I think there's probably a lot of people who open up their first IRA under the same circumstances. You leave an employer, and your options are generally to leave your funds in that employer's 401k plan, or you can roll it over into a personal IRA or an individual IRA, or you could, of course, take the money out, which is the last thing you want to do because you get hit with not only taxes, but you get hit with a 10% penalty whenever you just take the money out and say go buy a car or furniture or whatever the case may be, because it is a tax deferred retirement account. That's the purpose of those funds. And that's why it's treated a certain way, and there's certain benefits that come along with that. So when you use that money for something other than that, you tend to get penalized. Not tend to get penalized, you will get penalized. So the IRA is often a companion of the 401k. And it is one of the differences in the 401k and the individual IRA is that you often have many, many, many more options as to what funds you want to put your money in, because companies like Fidelity and Vanguard and Charles Schwab, those types of organizations that hold these types of accounts, they have a ton of options for you to choose from. So that is actually one of the advantages of having an individual IRA. And there are two versions of the IRA, just like we talked about the traditional 401k and the Roth 401k. Very similar to that, when you talk about individual retirement accounts, there's a traditional IRA and there is a Roth IRA. And as we said before, anytime you hear Roth, that means you pay your taxes now and you don't have to pay them later as it grows tax-free and you spend it tax-free. So there are some similarities in the 401k there. One of the primary considerations for individual retirement accounts or IRAs, first of all, let's talk about the contributions or the contribution limits. For 2023, each IRA holder, each account holder can contribute $6,500 per year to an IRA. If you are 50 years old or older, you have the opportunity to contribute a $1,000 catch-up contribution, which brings that total to $7,500 or $7,500. So that's the contributions or the contribution limit for individual retirement accounts. When you start talking about income limits, it can get pretty interesting because, number one, for the traditional IRA, there are no income limits. No matter how much money you make, you can contribute to a traditional IRA. but not all of that contribution will likely be deductible for the traditional IRA. Now, when you talk about the Roth IRA, there are, so you got to think about this. When you think about Roth, first of all, like I said before, you're paying your taxes up front before you contribute. The benefit is that your money grows tax free. If you're single or head of household, you cannot contribute to a Roth IRA if you make $153,000 or more than $153,000. Your ability to contribute to a Roth IRA starts getting phased out once you get to $138,000. So if you got that kind of modified adjusted gross income, that's the official name. Once you get to $138,000, your ability to contribute starts being phased out. And once you get all the way to 153, you can no longer contribute. That's single or head of household. Sticking with the Roth, if you're married filing jointly, you start getting phased out once your modified adjusted gross income hits $218,000. So from $218,000 to $228,000, it starts getting phased out more and more and more. And once you get above 228, you can no longer contribute to a Roth IRA. Now let's move back to the traditional IRA for a second. This one can get a little tricky. It's not really difficult, but there's some stipulations that determine whether or not you can deduct your annual contributions to the traditional individual IRA, individual retirement account. So, for example, if you are married, filing jointly, and you also participate in a retirement plan at work. So let me say that again. If you're married, filing jointly, and you have access to a retirement plan at work, here are the specifics that determine whether or not you can deduct your contributions or not. First of all, your modified adjusted gross income has to be $116,000 or less. In that situation, you can generally get a full deduction of, if you just say you contribute the maximum, which is if you're under 50, $6,500. If you're 50 or more, $7,500. You can generally get the entire amount of your contribution deducted on your income taxes. In that same situation, married, filing jointly, and you have access to a retirement plan at work, between $116,000 and $136,000, you will get a partial deduction based on your modified adjusted gross income. And in that same situation, if it's $136,000 or more, you will not get a deduction. Let's say, again, you're married, filing jointly, and your spouse participates in a retirement plan at work. In that situation, if your modified adjusted gross income is $218,000 or less, you will generally get the full amount of your contribution deducted. You will. If your modified adjusted gross income is from $218,000 to $228,000, you will get a partial deduction. And finally, if it's $228,000 or more, you will not get a deduction. So again, then I won't even get into if neither of you has access to a retirement plan at work. There are stipulations there too. Just know that how much you can deduct and whether you're eligible for the deduction on the traditional IRA is determined by partially determined by whether you have access to a retirement plan at work or not, or whether your spouse has access to a retirement plan at work or not. So that can get pretty interesting. But any of the professionals at any of the main retirement firms or investment firms can certainly answer those questions, and it won't cost you anything. As I said earlier, having money in an IRA gives you the opportunity to invest in a wide variety of funds, a much wider variety than you could a typical employer 401k. So those two things, the 401k and the individual IRA, is something that we often see used together as people sock money away again for their latter years. It's not required. It's just a great thing to have if you have more than one source of retirement income. There's another one. There's another type of account that we haven't talked about yet. So we've talked about the 401k, the traditional and the Roth. We talked about the IRA, the traditional and the Roth. The third kind of primary account is basically a taxable brokerage account. A taxable brokerage account. What that is that is a non-retirement account that allows you to grow assets. And this account, as I said, is not a retirement account. So there's no penalty for taking money out. If you sell shares of a fund within that account, you're not penalized for it. You will be taxed, but you're not penalized for it. And this is an account that's great to have once you, if you possibly can, because, say you're in retirement, you want to buy a car and you don't want to take money out of your IRA because you don't have to. You could use your taxable brokerage account to fund that purchase. You could use that kind of account to fund a vacation trip if you want. What's essential, in my opinion, and I won't say it's essential because it's just my opinion, there are a lot of people who share this opinion, you're using the same kinds of funds that we talked about last week, low cost index funds. We don't have to get fancy. As I said several weeks ago, my purpose is to try to keep this as simple as possible so that we can live our lives and not have to spend 24 hours a day doing this kind of stuff. We set our asset allocation. We determine which percentage of our funds we want in equities or stocks and which percentage of them we want in bonds. We set it, forget it, and we go ahead and live our life. And the taxable brokerage account is no different. And I've mentioned the big three, Vanguard and Fidelity and Schwab, several times during this podcast because those are the main ones that people talk about, whether you're a DIY investor or whether you use an advisor. Those are the big three. And personally, and this is strictly personal, I'm a big fan of Vanguard. Vanguard, or Jack Bogle, the founder of Vanguard, was the person who developed the first mutual fund, the first index fund. And Vanguard is actually owned by its investors. It's not publicly traded. It's not owned by a family. It is owned by its customers. And that is one of the reasons that they're so low cost, because they are absolutely looking out for the best deal for their customers who happen to also double as their owners. But that's just me. But all of those firms are really strong and can help you if you have funds in one of the others already. That's awesome. No, I'm not trying to demean any organization, but that's just a personal note about my preference. The last couple of episodes we've talked about, the focus has been kind of talking about the kinds of funds that might make up a foundational investment portfolio. The biggest piece in most cases is going to be your 401k. And then most cases, your second, maybe largest account, if you have it, is going to be an IRA. And then, of course, the taxable brokerage account, which is the last one I mentioned. It's important to note also that with the IRAs, if you're married, you can have an account and your spouse can have an account. It's $6,500 per account. So you actually have the opportunity to have an account for both spouses, and that's just another way to grow your funds even larger. That's important to note that because I think sometimes people think it's only if you are working and say your spouse is not, you can still have an individual retirement account for your spouse. All right, as long as you have earned income. So that's something that's very important. If you have the ability to do that, it's a great way to supersize your retirement accounts. And anytime you can supersize your retirement accounts, you can supersize your retirement. You can live like you want to live, and you give yourself options to do things just because you want to do them, not because you have to. And that is one of the great things about being wise with our money as we're working and as we're earning income, so that when we get to the point where we no longer can or no longer want to work to earn income, the money that we've set aside, the money that we've invested, the money that we've put to work on our behalf now takes care of us. That's the plan. That's the goal. So all those years that you were disciplined and you controlled yourself, placed parameters around your spending, all of those things that you did with a larger goal in mind, once you get to that point, it will be great to be able to sit back and say, look what I've done, and not have to worry about money ever again in your life because you did those things early on. We want to enjoy life. We want to enjoy the things that our money can buy for us. Nobody's saying not to do that at all. But we also have to put limitations on ourselves because our older self will look back on us and either thank our younger self or ask our younger self, what were you thinking? My preference is to look back on my younger self and say, man, you really did that. And I appreciate it. I read an article today about this lady who's up in age, up at retirement age, and she just admitted, she said, I guess my philosophy was just make it and spend it. No real thought given to what she was going to do once she got to the age where she is now. And now she's had to sell her house, and she's had to get a place with like two or three other women, and she's working, and she's having to basically scrape. But she realizes she's not blaming anybody. She realizes that what got her in the situation she's in now is the way she thought about money when she was much younger and much stronger. Okay, so trying everything we can to help as many people as we can not be in that situation once you get to your golden years. I want you to be able to enjoy those years, do the things you want to do, and not have to do the things you don't want to do. That's the goal. So I hope you've enjoyed this discussion on IRAs, and um, we just love presenting this kind of information because we know it can be valuable to you. And I want to go ahead and tell you, if you're one of those people who really gets into this type of information and this type of sharing, you should probably, not should, you are in the minority because so many people are not giving any real thought to this kind of stuff. They're just kind of going along. They may do a little something, but they don't really have a plan. So I commend you if you're one of those folks who are serious about this stuff and are putting thought and action into managing uh, your resources. you should pat yourself on the back because you're certainly um, part of a small group of folks that think like that. So I appreciate you guys for listening. This is the Financial Deviant Podcast saying, see you next time.